All right. So just a foreword on this is he basically makes it clear, and this is what you need to understand, that there's nothing new in this, okay? Anything that he's saying, and he says this in his own foreword, is I'm just a compiler. I literally just aggregated different things from different places in the Torah and the Gemara and all these different places, and now I'm going to share them with you. Okay? Mm-hmm. So there's nothing in here that says, hey, this is his invention. Now part of it is modesty, but every single thing in here is sourced. So if I aggregate a bunch of stuff, like, I don't know, let's say I'm some caterer and I get you food from here and a chicken dance from the club, and I get you catering from John, I get you all this stuff, I could do a great job, and you'd be like, wow, this guy does an amazing job. But I'm still just compiling pieces, right? So no one would say, oh, he makes great food. No, he just compiles, right? That's all he's saying that he's doing, okay? So if anyone ever says, oh, this is the Alter Rebbe created, invented, whatever, yes, it takes a genius to do, it takes a tzaddik to do, but he's basically just saying, hey, I'm taking this out of the Gemara, I'm taking this out of different other past Sfarim, different locations, and all sourced. So there's never a time where this is like his opinion. Okay, these are like, even though he wrote his own Shulchan Aruch, called Shulchan Aruch Harav, this was very well, which is very well accepted. This is a, according to him, and in the intro it's called the compiler's foreword, that he's just a compiler. Okay, and he says that about himself. All right, so let's get right into it. So, Perak Aleph B'Tanya, the first chapter of Tanya. A Tanya means it's a brisa. You know what a brisa is because you grew up in school. There's a part of a Gemara, an addendum to it that he is quoting from in the tractate of Nida. Okay, in the Masechet Nida, this is what it says in Masechet Nida. This is what the Gemara says. It says Mashbi'in oto, that when a person is born, a baby's born, the malachim come to the soul and say, you got to swear something to us. What are you swearing? Tehi tzaddik ve'al tehi rasha. You have to swear that you're going to be a tzaddik and not a rasha. You can't be wicked. That's what every baby is sworn to before it's born. Okay? This is what it says in Nida. Ve'afilu kol ha'olam kulo omrim lecha tzaddik ata. If the entire world, when you're born, comes to you and says, okay, you're righteous, you're a tzaddik, okay, tzadikata, hayeh be'anecha kerasha. So, okay, so now it says one thing. It's like, okay, you're going to swear that you will never be wicked. You have to swear to us that you're going to be righteous. But then, once you're born and you live in this world, if everyone comes to you and says, you are a tzaddik, in your own eyes, look at yourself like you're a rasha. Okay? So now we're getting like a juxtaposition here, right? So tzarich lavin, we have to understand, how does this make any sense? You want me to be a tzaddik, but then you want me to consider myself a rasha? Like, which one is it? And this is all statements in Gemara, right? Tzarich lavin, deha tanan, it says in Pirkei Avos, ve'al tihi rasha b'fnei atzmecha. Pirkei Avos literally says, don't be wicked in your own eyes. So which one is it? You want me to swear to be righteous? You say, if everyone tells me that I'm righteous, I have to think of myself as a rasha. But then Pirkei Avos is telling me, don't ever look at yourself as a rasha. V'gam im yeh be'einav kerasha, if you actually see yourself as a wicked person, right? Yareh levavo v'yeh etzev v'lo yochal la'avod et Hashem b'simcha u'b'tuv levav. If you are seeing yourself as a wicked person, and you know what that entails, right? All the punishments, Gehenna, all this other stuff. Hashem hates me because I do all these averas. How is that going to allow you to serve God? If the whole point of you swearing before you're born to be a tzaddik is so that you fulfill Torah and mitzvahs, but then we tell you, hey, even if everyone then tells you that you're righteous, consider yourself wicked, but then Pirkei Avos says, hey, wait a second, don't be a rasha in your own eyes. All these contradictory statements. It's like, well, which one is it? Because if you do think of yourself as wicked, You won't be able to serve Hashem. You're going to be so depressed, like, hey, there's no future for me. I got nothing going on for me. How am I going to actually do Torah and mitzvahs with joy? And if that doesn't bother you, if you're like, you know what, I am a Rasha, who cares? If that doesn't bother you, all of a sudden be like, wait a second, that's another Avera. Like, I just don't even care. Forget like, okay, if I accepted that I was wicked, then fine. And that made me sad, fine, I wouldn't be able to serve Torah. I wouldn't be able to serve Hashem. But guess what? At least I'm sad about it. What if you're not even sad about it? You're going to accept that you're wicked and just not care? That might even be worse, right? You have no remorse over the fact that you're a Rasha. So there's all these contradictory statements. Now, the Alter Rebbe is going to be like, okay, well, since all of that is true, right? The Gemara says it's here that you have to swear to be righteous. The Pirkei Avos says, don't be evil in your own eyes. Then the Gemara says, be evil in your own eyes, even if someone tells you he's wicked. We have to even understand the definition of what it means to be a tzaddik or what it means to be a rasha. Because clearly, the way that we think of a tzaddik, the way that we think of a rasha, has to be off. Because every single one of us talks about someone we know who's a good dude, and we're like, oh, that guy's a tzaddik, right? John always sticks around when the kiddush is over, even after he's not paid and he cleans up. What a tzaddik, right? Is that really a tzaddik? Like, that can't be the definition of this.
Well, what's what Rebbe's and the parents are, oh, you're a tzaddik.
You're saying, all right, everyone's a tzaddik, right?
The kid's been embedded in the kid's brain.
Right.
He's a tzaddik.
Right, and every single one of us thinks of a tzaddik as... Right, so like, hey, if a tzaddik is really a tzaddik, how does this make any sense? That you should be a tzaddik, but then think of yourself as wicked, but then don't think of yourself as too wicked, because then either you won't care and that'll be bad, or you won't be able to serve Torah and mitzvahs. Alter Rebbe is like, something's not lining up here, okay, about this Gemara. We got to figure out what these definitions actually are. So here's what he says, and he breaks it down into 5. He says, the Gemara has 5 different divisions or definitions of these tzaddik and rasha and what it really is, okay? And I'm going to tell you guys right now that what you think is a tzaddik, what you think is a rasha, has nothing to do with what it really is, okay? We just look at this as a reward and punishment type thing. The way we're used to from the time we're little kids is, hey, you do a mitzvah, you tip your scales in the favor of going to heaven. Right. You do an avera, you're going to hell, bro. Right? It's one or the other. There's always this scale. Which side are you on? Right? So we constantly think of tzaddikim and rashaim as it relates to punishment and reward. Alter Rebbe is coming saying like, okay, guys, you got it twisted, right? This isn't what it actually is, and let's clarify that. So he says there's 5 types of people in the world. You can only be one of these 5. Tzaddik v'tovlo, a perfect, complete tzaddik. A tzaddik who prospers. Everything in his life is great, in his physical life, and he's actually a tzaddik. Tzaddik v'ralo, a tzaddik who's a righteous guy, but who suffers in his life. Like he's poor, he has nothing, his kids are dying, whatever, but he's still a righteous guy. Rasha v'tovlo, a rasha, a wicked guy. People say all this time, how could it be that guy who doesn't keep any Torah and mitzvahs, and he doesn't do anything, has all this money and a successful hot wife and whatever else he wants, right? You're like, how could that be? So there's this rasha that actually prospers in this world. And then Rasha v'ralo, a wicked guy who has it miserable. And a Benoni, the intermediate man. So basically he's saying there's 2 types of tzaddikim, there's 2 types of Rishaim, basically a tzaddik who prospers and one who doesn't. A rasha who prospers and one who doesn't, and then the intermediate, the Benoni. Now, the word Benoni in Hebrew literally means like in the middle. So if we're thinking of reward and punishment, you're literally thinking of there's scales of justice, and this guy stands right in the middle. So he did 10 mitzvahs today, and he did 10 averas today, and the scales literally sit stagnant and don't shift in either direction, okay? That's what we all think of as a Benoni. And the Gemara says, tzaddik v'tovlo, what is a prosperous tzaddik? A guy who literally has it all good for him. Is a tzaddik gamur, a complete tzaddik. The guy literally has no averas ever. He's never sinned a day in his life. Think a Moshe Rabbeinu, think a Rambam, think of Lubavitcher Rebbe, these kinds of people, okay? Then what does it say? Tzaddik v'ralo. What is a righteous person who doesn't prosper? Tzaddik v'ralo is she'eno gamur. Tzaddik she'eno gamur, like an incomplete tzaddik. So what is an incomplete tzaddik? We think of tzaddik as someone who is already complete. Like, he's a righteous guy. You know what I mean? He's only half righteous. Like, if you're even calling him righteous, then he either has to be righteous, he has to be righteous enough to be called righteous, right? So what does that even mean, an incomplete tzaddik? Right? And in the Zohar it says, in Parshat Mishpatim it says, tzaddik v'ralo, what is the tzaddik that's incomplete? Sha'ara shebo kafuf latov. Meaning, you know that little voice in your head that's always like, watch porn, don't watch porn, right? For you specifically. You know that voice, right? Do a mitzvah, give that guy $1, don't give him $1. Whatever it is, right? That voice in your head is something that all 5 of these people technically should have. The Gemara is saying no. The complete tzaddik, the righteous guy who's complete, doesn't have that voice. He's a guy who literally, you know, the little like angel and the devil cartoons over the shoulders, like in the old cartoons, like this guy's telling him to do good and that guy's telling him to do bad. It's like, well, which shoulder are you going to listen to? You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. So the complete tzaddik, the Gemara is basically saying the complete tzaddik only has the angel on both sides. There is no devil on the other side trying to convince him. He has no desire to ever sin, ever. It never even crosses his mind. What does Gemara say is the incomplete tzaddik? The guy who literally never sins, ever. He doesn't do Avera. He's never done Avera in his life. But within him, that little devil on the right, left side that's sitting there chirping in his ear, saying do, Averas or don't do mitzvahs, he still has that. Now, he doesn't hear it. It's not vocal. It has no voice. But it's still within him. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So the complete tzaddik has no little devil at all. Has nowhere to reside. The incomplete is a righteous guy who never sins, but has that little guy who is mute. He can't speak, but he's still there. Okay? This is just for technicality purposes. Because remember, they're both tzaddikim. They're righteous. They don't do any averas. They never do anything wrong. So that's what it says about the incomplete tzaddik, that it's almost like subservient, like that little devil just has no power because the good side always wins. And the Gemara says, and Gemara Brachos says, that tzaddikim yetzer tov shoftan, rashaim yetzer ra shoftan. So basically, the Gemara is saying like this. You remember in Ninja Turtles? You for sure love Ninja Turtles. Okay. Remember in Ninja Turtles, Crane? Mm-hmm. He was like a little tiny nothing that sit in like this big body and he's just pulling the levers, and he's like this little dude on top in the brain that's just pulling the levers and moving this big body. You too old for Ninja Turtles?
I do remember that.
Okay.
It wasn't my thing.
Okay. So remember Crane?
I have no idea. How long you watched it?
Imagine that every single one of us, every Jew, no matter what kind of Jew you have, has like this little governor in his body that's pulling you, the guy who's calling the shots. Okay? So a tzaddik is only called, a complete tzaddik is always called, the only person calling his shots is the good side, the little angel on the right shoulder telling him, only do good. So if someone is within all of us controlling what we do, like that inner voice or the inner struggle, the tzaddik only has one angle, which is do what Hashem wants. The incomplete tzaddik has that other dude in the back, but he's mute, he's tied up, he's taped up over his mouth. He has no voice, but he's still sitting in a closet somewhere, tied up, okay? The incomplete Rasha, the incomplete wicked guy, we said the one who prospers or doesn't prosper. The incomplete one, the one who prospers, is a guy who literally is a Rasha, okay? He's driven by, we're saying what defines you here as whether you're a Rasha or whether you're a tzaddik. is not reward and punishment. It's not your actions. It's who's driving the boat. Okay? Tzaddikim's boats are driven by the good side. Rashaim's boats are driven by the bad side. The prevailing voice, right, that constantly speaks and has control of the ship for a Rasha is the voice that says, don't do what Hashem wants. Do anti what Hashem wants. And that's the louder voice. So the incomplete Rasha is the guy who, that voice is the prevalent voice that speaks. But somewhere in the back, he still has that good side, like just trying to fight his way out, okay? He's tied in the back and muted, and he's like, hey, just stop doing this stuff against Hashem. Stop doing this against your own neshama. Listen to Hashem, do what he wants, but it's very muted, okay? Because you're saying, this guy is evil. He's a Rasha. We're calling him a Rasha. So why is he not a complete Rasha? Because he still has somewhere in the back a little hostage tied up that is his good side saying, wake up, right? But he doesn't have a voice. The complete Rasha, and by the way, none of us know any of these people, is a guy who literally doesn't even have the good side. There's no good angel in the back tied out with his mouth duct taped, right? He doesn't even exist. It's just a bunch of bad dudes sitting there controlling traffic, okay? They control the flow. They're the captains of the ship. The fifth category, this Benoni, this intermediary guy that we think of as the guy who literally doesn't tip the scale in either direction because we're so used to being like, oh yeah, okay, Yom Kippur time. Are we going to heaven or are we going to hell? Are we going to have a good year or are we going to have a bad year? Who lives, who dies, right? This intermediate guy, according to the borrowed term for what a Benoni is a guy who literally lives in the middle. He has not more merits than he has sins. He's a guy who doesn't tip the scales in any direction. What the Alter Rebbe is saying here is, Tanya is saying, no. The Benoni isn't a guy who has half mitzvahs and half averos. That's just a borrowed term for reward and punishment purposes. The Benoni is actually the dude who literally sits there and has the little good voice on one side and the evil voice on the other side, and both those dudes get to hold microphones. They're both chirping in his ear all day long. He's sitting there just going, you. Who am I listening to right now? And I want you to know that literally 99.999% of the world falls into this category. Because every single person you know has the daily push and pull. This is something that happens every single second of every single day. You could have chosen not to come here and just slept for another hour or gone to work, right? You could have chosen to do the same thing. That right side of you said, I'm going to come to a shiur right now. There's probably that left side of you right now in the shiur being like, I'm getting the hell out of here. It's time to go, right? I'm losing my patience. That is just that's just reality. That's humanity, okay? And the Alter Rebbe is basically saying, the Benoni is this guy who's every single one of us, okay? The guy who has the two voices just yelling in his ear all day long. Now, you've heard of Rabbah in the Gemara? Rabbah? Okay. Big time Gemara righteous Jew. Rabbah in the Gemara comes and says, okay, I'm a Benoni. I'm an intermediate guy. Everyone is like, bro, hold your horses, okay? You've heard of Abaye? Rabbah and Abaye, they're always arguing against each other in the Gemara, okay?
And that Shimon and
like Shimon and Levi, and okay, Rabbah and Abaye. Right, but Rabbah and Abaye were actually, in the Gemara at times, arguing things left and right. It was always them two, okay? It's like Hillel and Shammai, okay? So Rabbah goes on and he's like, guys, guess what? I'm a Benoni. I'm Mr. Intermediate. And Abaye comes on, he's like, bro, you're literally not giving anyone in the world a chance to exist right now. Because if you're an intermediate, then what does that make the rest of humanity? Right? You're the guy who literally, it says in the Gemara that when the angel of death wanted to come take Rabbah, when it was for his time to go, he couldn't, because Rabbah never stopped saying words of Torah. And so long as he was saying words of Torah, he had no power, the angel of death had no power over him. So you're talking about a guy who literally never stopped saying words of Torah. Can you imagine that right now? Right? A guy who never stops that? That's who Rabbah was. So his homie Abaye is like, okay, bro, hold on. If that's what you are, if you're saying you're an intermediate, then we're all Rashaim, we're all wicked guys. Like, you're not giving anyone a chance to live. Like, give us a shot. If you want to say you're a tzaddik, fine. Some of us can be Beinonim, we can be intermediate, we can be wicked, we can be whatever. But at least you give us a chance, right? You're bringing yourself down this level, and that's what you're saying. So how could that be? So the Alter Rebbe is clearly saying, okay, wait a second. This must be that we're talking about a different definition of what a Benoni actually is, and that's what I'm telling you. A Benoni is anyone. It doesn't matter. You're saying, I do mitzvahs, I don't mitzvahs. A Benoni is anyone who literally has those two inner voices chirping in his ear all day. Do right, do wrong. Do right, do wrong. The pull is the same in either direction. So then the Alter Rebbe is like, okay, fine. Abaye is like, you know what, fine. Rabbah, even though you never sin, you never stop saying words of Torah, it's not because there's no one pulling you to not do good. It's just that you choose not to listen to him. So, okay, fine. Now we can accept that you're a Benoni. Because there's no way you have the same amount of sins as you have rewards or merits. Because we know that you do mitzvahs all day, you learn Torah all day. So fine, we're willing to accept that you're a Benoni if you're telling us, hey guys, guess what? It's about who I am. What makes you a Rasha, or what makes you a tzaddik, or what makes you a Benoni, in true definition, take reward and punishment out of it, has nothing to do with what you deserve in a court. It has everything to do with who drives your decisions. What motivates your actions? Who's whispering in your ear? Do you hear the voice of good? Do you hear the voice of bad? Do you only hear one voice and not the other? Or do you hear both voices simultaneously all the time? Everyone you guys know, this is a spoiler alert, is in that Benoni category. Because I don't believe that anyone you know is actually a Rasha. Okay? Leave, Hitler, Yamach Shimon, all these guys out of here, right? Leave these people out. Everyone else is just a guy in the middle trying to do his best. And so the Alter Rebbe is saying, okay, clearly there's a definition here that we just misunderstood. And now we can understand how the Gemara is coming and saying, okay, you got to swear to be righteous, but don't think of yourself as righteous, but don't think of yourself as wicked, because in that first understanding where we think that this is like, okay, anyone who has more mitzvahs is a tzaddik, and anyone who has less mitzvahs is a Rasha, and anyone who's in the middle is a Benoni, those aren't clear definitions. So we have to understand that the only reason Rabbah could even have mistaken himself as that is because he's saying, hey, I got a voice in my head that chirps, don't do what Hashem wants. I just never listened to him. But the fact that he's still there means I'm still part of the struggle, right? Everyone says the struggle is real, right? The real struggle is that for regular people like us, if you're not a Moshe Rabbeinu, even if you spend your whole life just learning Torah, all day, that's all you did, you literally can't get rid of your Yetzer Hara. You can't get rid of that little voice that's going to come at you. That acceptance of that is actually what makes a Jew a Jew. Because every single one of us is taught when we're young that, oh, you got to be a tzaddik. You could be a tzaddik if you learn a lot. And guess what? None of us can be tzaddikim. You, me, you, no one you know can be a tzaddik. And guess what? And the Alter Rebbe goes on further later in the Tanya to say that in the second that you're doing an Avera, even one time, for that second, you're literally considered a Rasha during that time. When you stop, you're not a Rasha anymore. When you're doing a mitzvah, in that time, you're considered a complete tzaddik. But you're always going to have the struggle of the back and forth. And if you don't accept that, then you're just not understanding how God created you.
It's life.
But most people think that they can either be good or bad. The good or bad is something that is a daily, minute, hour, minute, second struggle that no matter how much good you do, if you live for 85 years and you never do one Avera, that still doesn't make you a tzaddik. Because what makes you a tzaddik is not having that chirp in your ear telling you to go the other way. If you want to talk about a real definition of a tzaddik, and guess what? No one you know is a Rasha. Because what makes you a Rasha is never having that good side chirping in your ear saying do something good. Every single person you and I know has both sides. We can hear it all the time. Do you know anyone who's not like that? Who constantly has one way or the other? Never has a bad thought? Never thinks for 1 second to not learn Torah and just watch a football game? Right? Do you know anyone like that? No. And so the real definition of a Benoni is every single one of us. Which is why this book is so important. Because he literally levels the playing field. And he says, guys, I know this is what you thought, right? You had these visions that if you're not LeBron James, you can't play basketball. Either you're 6'8", 280, and you're 45-inch vertical and you're dunking on everyone, or you just can't shoot a ball. Like, that just doesn't make sense, right? So they're like, hey, guess what? I'm going to show you the ropes. I'm going to show you that every single one of us is in the game. There's not one person who's more in the game, who's less in the game. You can't never miss. And even if you were able to never sin, let's say from here on out, you vowed, I will never do an Avera again, which is nearly impossible because even Bittul Torah for 1 second is technically you not doing the mitzvah, right? You're being over on Bittul Torah. Every single person is over on that. But let's just say that you said, I'm never going to sin again. If you said, you know what, I developed a strength where no one is ever going to faze me or shake me or rattle me ever because I'm never going to sin from here on out, you still won't be a tzaddik. Because I guarantee you that you will still have that voice in your ear every single day, even if you conquer it, saying, guess what? Maybe you shouldn't go to davening today. Even if you say, screw you, I'm not listening, I'm going to davening every single day, you're still going to have that voice in your ear. So anytime you hear someone say, oh, that guy, he's a tzaddik. No, he's not. Straight up, he's not. He might be a guy with a lot of good deeds. But I promise you he has that voice, and every single one of us has that voice in both directions. We're going to go into finish this chapter next time, but the point that I have to get across right now is that every single one of us has this ability to choose because we have both voices. You see, if you were born a Rasha and you didn't have that good side, you couldn't choose to do good. Just like a tzaddik who doesn't hear the evil side can't choose to do evil.
Right.
Every single one of us has a choice. You live your whole life thinking there's only one way. No, there's two ways, and they're literally chirping in your ear all day long, and it's just about who you decide to listen to at the time. And just because you won one battle doesn't mean you don't have 6,000 more that same day. And that, by the way, understanding that this is going to be the rest of your life changes how you approach life. Because people who think they've won the battle might feel good for that second. The next time the next battle comes around, they're like, what? I thought I conquered this. Like, you ever play golf?
Mm-hmm.
You ever play golf? You think you crushing it one day on the range.
Uh-huh.
You come out and you're chunking it the next day, right? In golf, it's easy because you're like, this is the best. I'm coming out here, I'm going to smoke a cigar with my friends, I'm having a drink, right? I'm come, get away from the wife for 5 hours. You still come out. Most people in life, in Judaism, are like, I'm just never going to be that. Yeah, okay, I went to shul today, but I got to go to shul again tomorrow. Like, I got to make the right decision again tomorrow. Like, you hit a bad shot in golf, you just take another swing, right? I think the main lesson, at least for the first chapter, is to just have to define and understand that we will never you never win. It's just a constant, and this is what your life is. It's going to be a constant daily battle and struggle and journey, No matter how much Torah you learn, how many mitzvahs you do, how many times you go to shul, there's never a time where you can just go on autopilot. Oh, you know what? I went to shul for 3 straight years. I never missed a minyan. Dovi Elman. The guy hasn't missed shacharis with tefillin since his bar mitzvah. Not one minyan with tefillin. Chol Hamoed, fine, different thing. He took on tefillin with a minyan. Now, because he's done it for 25 years, does that make it easier because it's a given that he knows he's just never going to miss shacharis? Sure. But I guarantee there's times at 5 in the morning when it's 20 degrees out where he's like, I'd love to stay in my bed. Right? Now, he knows it enough because he's done it for so long. But that struggle of the little chirp, maybe that guy's voice gets softer. Maybe it gets quieter. He's not in your ear as much because he just knows he's going to lose, right? You come to your wife with the same thing over and over and over and she constantly says no. Guess what? It's not happening, right? Now, you might ask less. You might still want it. You might ask in a softer tone. You might text her instead of saying it to her face. Yeah, say, okay, so you diminish, right? Your wife is still saying no either way. So the little voice here can get more dim in a Benoni, but it's never going to disappear. And it might get dim on one thing, and then it might raise its voice on something else. So you might have said, guess what? I just crushed it. I got to shacharis every day for a month. And then the voice comes around and is like, now that you go to shacharis, you don't even need a daven mincha anymore, right? It can go forever. He's going to find you in different ways. But the acceptance of that we're always going to be on this daily battle, is something that every Jew just needs to accept. Because once you realize that you're just never going to be LeBron James, you can get better at being sixth man off the bench, right? Like, that's your role. And by the way, in the human body, there's a head, there's organs, there's limbs. What if your toenail tried to be your brain? That's not its job, dude. It has to be your toenail. It can't be your brain. Every single person in the Jewish people has to understand that they are who they are. Their role is their role. If you're not born Moshe Rabbeinu, guess what? You don't get to turn your brother's staff into a snake and turn blood and water into blood, right? You are not Moshe Rabbeinu. And guess what? 99.999% of humanity is never going to be. So understanding the assignment, what our task is, our job is to be the best intermediate guy we can be. You just have to accept that no matter who you are, no matter which rabbi you are, you give the best speeches, you constantly have something that you are going to struggle with, and tomorrow it's going to be something else, and you constantly have to win that battle because you are never going to be a tzaddik.
It's life.
That's life.
That's life.